Well, good morning. I'm James Henry, and no, I'm not live. I'm coming to you via video. I have to be away this weekend, so I'm hoping this message will speak to you. We're continuing on in our series about the resurrection appearances of John in the Gospel of John. Jesus has appeared to the disciples and cooked them breakfast last week. He met them on the beach, and this week it's going to be a little bit different. Now, this morning as I was sitting in my spiritual chair, it's not any more spiritual than any other chair, but it's where I sit when I do my morning prayer and my morning sits, reading, journaling, all of those kinds of things every day. As I was sitting there, I did my morning meditation time. I did a little reading, and then I picked up my phone because that's my meditation timer, and turned off the meditation timer. And then, of course, I was intrigued by what emails might be there. So I, for a few minutes, glanced through the 53 emails that had come in overnight. And then, after that, I did that dangerous thing, which is I went to my Facebook feed. And an hour later, I got off of my Facebook feed and off of my Instagram and realized that I had used an hour that could have been spent in journaling, in prayer, in reading, glancing sometimes at things that just stirred me up and were not edifying at all. They weren't particularly helpful. Now, I say this because I don't know if you ever get yourself caught up in some activity, and you'll see why that I think it's important to talk about that today. Today's reading comes to us, as I mentioned before, from the Gospel of John, chapter 21, and I begin with verse 16. When they had eaten their meal, Jesus said to Simon Peter, "Simon, ben John, do you love me more than these?" Peter said, "Yes, Rabbi, you know that I'm your friend." Jesus said, "Feed my lambs." A second time Jesus put the question, "Simon ben John, do you love me?" Peter said, "Yes, Rabbi, you know that I'm your friend." Jesus replied, "Tend my sheep." A third time, Jesus asked him, "Simon ben John, do you love me more as a friend would?" Peter was hurt because Jesus asked, "Do you love me?" a third time. So he said, "You know everything, Rabbi. You know that I'm your friend." Jesus said, "Feed my sheep." This is the gospel for today. You know, as I looked at this text, several things stood out to me that I'm going to talk just a moment to you about. One of those things was in that first questioning, everyone was satisfied from breakfast. Jesus asks Simon ben John, that is Simon, son of John, "Do you love me more than these?" Now, that phrase, as I sat with it in Lectio Divina this morning, was the phrase that stood out for me. More than these. Do you love me more than these? Now, the question for me is, was Jesus gesturing to the other disciples who were sitting around the fire while they were having breakfast? Did he gesture to the whole world around them? Had they taken a little walk on the beach? Were they a little further away? And so more than these, and there might be other fishermen, other early morning folks with their boats. Who was he saying more than these? To whom was he referring? Well, as I listened to the more than these, I wondered about the things in my life that I seem to get caught up in. And if Jesus were asking me the question, James, Ben William, James, son of William, do you love me more than these? I would have to look at all the theses in my life. My social media accounts that seem to cause me to be attentive. The various shows that periodically catch me binge watching them on Netflix or Amazon Prime or Hulu or Disney Plus or any of those channels. Any of those, do I love Jesus more than entertainment? More than these forms of entertainment in my life? Do I love Jesus more than my books? I have got a wicked ton of books on my shelves. Linda and I have, just yesterday, she took some books off the shelf, and because I told her we could get rid of these books, and it was a whopping 6 books. I've read as much of my Leonard Sweet as I need to read. They're books that have been on my shelf for at least 2 decades, and now it's time for them to go away. And so she pulled them off. But those 6 books don't even begin to match up to the number of other books. Do I love Jesus more than my books? In fact, sometimes do I read a book instead of simply sit in the presence of Jesus? Do I miss out on the opportunity to appreciate, to love, to be present with Jesus? And so his question might be to me, James, Ben William, do you love me more than these? I couldn't even have the Peter response. Yes, Jesus, you're my friend. Yes, Rabbi, you're my friend. Because I have all these other pieces that I wonder, based on the amount of time I invest in them, am I thinking about more than these? Am I imagining that Jesus is loved in my life more than whoever the these were to whom he referred to in Simon Peter's life? So that first thing that came up for me is more than these, the sense of more than these. But then I also noticed that as he asked that question 3 times, a complete set of 3, that in the beginning, his first response after Peter comes back to him, you know I'm your friend. It is tend my lambs or feed my lambs. Now I don't know about you, and maybe this is not the implication at all in this particular text, but as I think about it, lambs are really cute, and they're really sweet, and their bleating grabs our attention, draws us in. They're soft, they dance around a bit, they're not their grown-up selves yet, they're tiny, and some people have in history even kept them as pets. And there's even some biblical stories. Even the prophets tell a story about a lamb, a baby lamb raised with the family. But we're not going there today. The truth is, lambs are cute and cuddly and maybe very attractive to us. The second time Jesus asks Simon Peter, do you love me? You know, Rabbi, I'm your friend. Jesus says, tend my sheep. I don't know if you've ever spent much time around sheep. I haven't spent a lot of time around sheep, but every time I've been around sheep, one thing has stood out to me and stood out strongly. Sheep stink. They don't smell that great. And they're big and fluffy and woolly, and they're, delightful animals, but they just don't smell very good. So tending sheep is a messy business. It's a smelly business. It's not the cute little lamb. Jesus, I think is inviting Peter into the bigger picture. Sure, I'll take care of the lambs. Tend my sheep. And then that third time, when Peter indicates his feelings are hurt, the third time he asked Jesus about it, it's feed my sheep. It's not easy work following and loving Jesus with our lives, because sometimes it's cute lambs and sometimes it's stinky sheep. And we are meant to tend to, care for, love those sheep and make sure they're fed. And that's part of our following Jesus. That's not just we didn't just overhear that. The gospel is designed so we overhear what Jesus told the disciples, and we are supposed to get that we too are disciples. We may not be Simon Peter, but I, James Ben William, am no less spoken to by Jesus in this particular passage than anybody else is, than Peter was. I am called to not only feed the lambs, but to tend the sheep and to feed the sheep. And it's not just me as a pastor, which is what I happen to be, but it's all of us who follow in the path of Jesus. We are meant to tend to, care for one another, and it requires an engagement beyond our intellect. It requires that we choose to love Jesus more than these. All of the other distractions of our lives, our fast cars, our cool titles, our big bank accounts, our retirement savings, our social media accounts, our ability to binge watch other kinds of entertainment. Jesus is inviting us to know that we are meant to love Him, His work, more than these. That we are meant to, as ones who would love Him more than these, we're meant to care for the lambs, cute, cuddly little beings of fluff that they are, as well as tend to the sheep, the stinky sheep, the sheep that don't look like us or act like us or aren't in the same economic location as us or who aren't of the same nationality than us. We cannot, as followers in the path of Jesus, count anybody out. That's not our job. It's above our pay grade. It is Jesus' job, and if we love Him, he asked Peter not once, not twice, but 3 times, do you love me? If we love Him, we are meant to love the world He loves. How are you doing with that? How are you doing with that? Like me, are you caught up in your social media accounts, getting your next tweet out there on Twitter, or get your next Facebook post? Make sure first, though, that you good and Photoshop yourself so that you look even better than you really do in real life. Are you caught up in that world of all of these? Or can you, with Simon Peter, answer the question in the affirmative? Can you hear that question? Do you love me more than these? And can you be honest enough with yourself to say, absolutely. Jesus, I love you. I love this world that you love, and I am called to tend to and care for it. Whether it's cute and fluffy and warm and cuddly, or whether it stinks, because sometimes it does. But your calling and mine is to tend those sheeps. There we go. Little grammar for you. Sheep is the plural. Do you love Jesus enough and the path He set for us to love the world that He loves, and act on it? act on it. Yes, Jesus loves you infinitely and unconditionally just for who you are. That's absolutely true. But the call of our loving Him in response is to also love the world, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and to reach out and make a difference. So I encourage you to ponder that and perhaps to try to put that to work in your life. Do you love Jesus more than these? And if so, are you willing to love the world that He loves? And if you are, what will you do about it? How will you live that out?